Hi, we're Quentin Kira's Volumes. My name is James. I've been asked by Aaron Facer to do the Holmes for the Holidays tag. I think that's what it's called. Yes, Holmes for the Holidays. This is a series of tags themed around Sherlock Holmes, a fictional character from the Victorian era, a detective. Well, you know who Sherlock Holmes was. The prompts are all references to things in Holmes or things that Holmes said. Um, so I am going to do these. It will be. It was a little tough for me. I'm not much of a mystery reader. So here we go. Though you don't have to be a mystery reader to do most of these. The first one, though, Elementary, My Dear Watson. Share a classic mystery novel that you consider a must read. I have no place to consider any mystery novel a must read because I don't read a lot of mystery novels. Um, but, I mean, it's incredibly basic to say A Study in Scarlet. That was a classic mystery novel that I have read, and it was great. Um, it's the one where Sherlock Holmes meets Dr. Watson, they become roommates, they have an adventure. Sherlock Holmes uses one of those big magnifying glasses. He demonstrates his powers of deductive reasoning. Um, Inspector What's His Name comes in and bungles around. It's great. And then in the middle of it, weird plot twist. Something you didn't see coming. I didn't see it coming. So yeah, A Study in Scarlet. Pretty good mystery novel, according to me. And very basic. I mean, I've read other mystery stories. I've read a bunch of Sherlock Holmes stories. That's the only novel. If you want to get really basic, you might read the story of Bell or Daniel in the Apocrypha. In my copy of the Bible, it's called Bell and the Dragon is the book. It's one of the apocryphal books, sometimes called the first detective story, in which Daniel solves a mystery of some food that disappears every night, and the priests of Bel, who is this idol or a god, a Babylonian god, say that the god is eating it. And Daniel says, this is just a statue. And King Cyrus, king of the Persians, says, well, let's have a little wager. We'll seal the room up. If the food is eaten by Bel in the night, if it's gone in the morning, I will just kill Daniel. And if not, I will kill all the priests of Bel. It's a very high stakes kind of a situation. I won't ruin it for you. You can probably guess who gets the better of whom. It's a very short book. I mean, the story of Bel is just a couple of paragraphs long. You can read in less time than it took me to babble on about it. So, Babylon. Okay. Next prompt. Baker Street Irregulars. Recommend a book with a group of unlikely heroes or a diverse ensemble cast. This took me a while because there's a lot of them, but one I want to mention is called BearHeart. Bear like the animal, but BearHeart is one word. BearHeart, the Heirship Chronicles. And Heirship is Heirship, as in heir to the throne, or, someone who's inheriting something. And that is written by a writer named Gerald Vizenor, who was an Anishinaabe novelist, Native American Anishinaabe. And it's a weird story of a post-apocalyptic situation where trees have been tapped for their energy, and a group of Native American outcasts of a sort are on the road trying to find refuge. It's hard to describe it. When I read it, I had recently read Naked Lunch, and I thought, this is kind of like a Native American Naked Lunch. It's weirdly trippy and violent and dirty and perverted, and there's nothing really like it. I've never met anyone else who's read it, but I think it does have a readership. I just don't know. I just don't know those people. Anyway, BearHeart, the Heirship Chronicles by Gerald Vizenor. Um, I guess the cast, they are all Native Americans, but they're all from kind of different walks of life, and they are strange in different ways. All right, next, The Game is Afoot. Name a book that had a plot twist or revelation that completely surprised you. So, Aaron talked about The Talented Mr. Ripley. That is a surprising book. I will say Ripley's Game, which is the third in that series. And it kind of depends on having read The Talented Mr. Ripley and the second one, Ripley Underground, I think, whatever the second one is called. But Ripley's Game has a very surprising turn about the middle of the book. Kind of starts off and seems to be one thing, and then something else happens, and it's something else. All right. Yeah, it's hard to talk about these without saying what the plot twist is. Let's see. 221B, Baker Street. Talk about the time you visited somewhere of literary significance. All right, I'll tell you two stories. One was when I was very young. I grew up in Queens and on Long Island, in New York State. And my father had a cousin who was rather successful at something. I believe it was graphic design or advertising. And he invited us over to his house to go in the pool one day. They lived not too far from us. At this big house I think he had a tennis court. Most people I grew up with didn't have tennis courts or swimming pools, but I think he had both. We went in the pool, we met my dad's cousin who I'd never seen before, and the person who lived next door to them was Mario Puzo, author of the Godfather novels. So I guess that's a site of literary significance. Look, if you're from Long Island and you're at least partially Italian American as I am, that's an important person. And another was, now I live in the Piedmont of North Carolina, where sometimes we go out to western North Carolina to the city of Asheville, which was the hometown of Thomas Wolfe, the early 20th century novelist Thomas Wolfe. And there's a historic site in downtown there, which was his childhood home, or one of them. It was a house that Thomas Wolfe's mother bought and operated as a rooming house and a bed and breakfast. If you've read Wolfe's novel, Look Homeward, Angel, a lot of it is based on his experience growing up in this rooming house. So little Thomas Wolfe lived in this house part-time when he was growing up, and he didn't actually have his own room because his mother would let the rooms to people who were in town for a brief period or just arrived looking for work or whatever. So she couldn't afford to dedicate a whole room to her own son, so he would just kind of fit into whatever bed in a room, and strangers would be put in the same rooms. You'd have like 3 or 4 people who didn't know each other, but they'd all have a bed in one room, and in one of them would be young Thomas Wolfe. His mother sounds like a very interesting and ambitious person, just based on the tour. So if you ever go to Asheville, it's near downtown, go take a tour of the Thomas Wolfe house. It's a classic kind of southern house with a big wide porch and rocking chairs and etc. It's pretty good. Worth a visit for the bookish or historically minded. Next prompt. Moriarty's master plan. Discuss a book where the antagonist was exceptionally cunning and memorable. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit here and say Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, it does have a famous antagonist, the plantation owner Simon Legree, and there's also Mr. Haley, who's a slave trader. But really, the antagonist, Simon Legree, not terribly cunning, just very brutal. But the antagonist is essentially the entire slavery system in this book. Even even more sympathetic characters like Augustus St. Clair, or I wrote down his name, Mr. Shelby, who is the plantation owner at the beginning of the book, considered a man of humanity, a relatively gentle and caring slave owner. The system, of course, and the book shows, is that even people with good intentions will end up doing things that will harm their slaves who they own and say that they care for. So Shelby, he says he cares for Uncle Tom and the young woman slave whose name I'm blanking on, and her son, whom he's going to sell at the beginning. And he doesn't want to sell any of these slaves, but he's in debt. And so, the situation that he is put in, because he's in debt, it's either his family suffers or he does this thing he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to do it, but he'll do it because he owns these people as property. Later on, Augustus St. Clair, who is in New Orleans, and Uncle Tom is sold to him, he decides he's going to emancipate his slaves. He fixes his mind on it, but then he dies suddenly before it can happen. Everyone gets sold off to these other plantation owners. So one of the kind of fiendish ways that the book works is that it sets it up so that whether you are good or you are bad, it does not really matter what your intentions are. If you're participating in this system, you're doing harm. I think the slave trader Haley, who in the beginning kind of starts off the action and chases the runaway slave who goes across the river on the ice. He at one point is like, maybe slavery is not so good. Well, if it's not, I can repent later. You may not have time for that. And in the meantime, he's brutalizing, people every single day to make his living. So there you go. That's the great antagonist is society, man. The Art of Deduction. This is the next prompt, by the way. Mention either a book that kept you guessing all the way to the end, or one where you guessed the outcome earlier on. One that kept me guessing all the way to the end was the novel Unless by Carol Shields. This is a novel about upper middle class woman who is a translator and a novelist whose teenage daughter, one day, for reasons that she doesn't understand, just starts sitting on a street corner in downtown Toronto with a sign that says goodness. And no one knows what that means, and no one can ask her because she won't answer. Well, you can ask her, but she won't answer. And it's a question, what happened? What does this sign mean? What is she trying to accomplish? Why did she start doing this? We find out in the end, sort of. It was not what I expected. Next prompt. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Talk about a book with a strong atmospheric setting, or one where this setting plays a significant role in the story. I'm going to say The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. One of the best books I've ever read. One I've only read once, but I very much look forward to reading again. Set in a tuberculosis sanitarium in the Swiss Alps before World War I. Pretty much all the action, if you can call it that, takes place within the sanitarium or in the town of Davos, where it is set. And there's a lot of snowy vistas. Even in summertime, there is snowfall. There's a great dining room where people eat 5 times a day. The setting, it's very strange. It is quite atmospheric. There's a whole chapter called Snow, which could be a book on its own, in which one of the characters wanders off on skis in the night and gets caught in a snowstorm. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of philosophical jawing that goes on for pages and pages. There are characters that I will never forget. The Magic Mountain. It's a book unlike no other. And it has a strong atmospheric setting. Next prompt. The Reichenbach Falls. Talk about a series that you thought had ended, but made a surprise comeback. There was a book that was not originally supposed to be part of a series. It's called The Monkey Wrench Gang by Edward Abbey. I read it in high school. The book came out in 1975. It's kind of an adventure novel. I considered using this for the book with a group of unlikely heroes. It's 4 people who live in the desert southwest of the United States and are upset by the environmental degradation caused by construction and dam building and logging and things like that, and they decide to take direct action to oppose it, up to and possibly including blowing up a dam. So this was a very inspirational book for a lot of people in the radical environmentalist movement in the 70s and 80s. The group Earth First was in part inspired by this book, and the term monkey wrench from the title Monkey Wrench Gang was a slang for doing things like putting spikes into trees so that they couldn't be cut down without damaging saws, or in other ways, vandalizing things to prevent development and environmental destruction. Now, that book was 1975. Edward Abbey died in 1989, and after he died, they came out with a posthumously published sequel called Hayduke Lives, Hayduke being one of the main characters in the Monkey Wrench Gang. So that was a bit of a surprise. Hayduke Lives, not quite as good as the Monkey Wrench Gang. Not nearly as good as the Monkey Wrench Gang, but if you want a fun adventure with environmental themes, the Monkey Wrench Gang might be up your alley. Next prompt. Sherlockian adaptations. Discuss your favorite book-to-screen adaptation or a retelling of a classic story. Now, Aaron Facer, who tagged me, he said the Lord of the Rings series. And boy, that is a great adaptation. I will also say A Room with a View, a great book, and the movie really follows it very closely and captures a lot of the atmosphere. And you know, it has all these scenes in Florence and Rome and the countryside of England. You get to see them, and there's good music in it, and it has Helena Bonham Carter, and it's great. What's not to like? The Great Detective. Recommend a book with a brilliant and memorable protagonist. I'm going to say Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner from 1972, I think. The main character is, well, the narrator is a guy named Lyman Ward, who's a retired professor with a disease that causes his bones to fuse together. And he's confined to a wheelchair, but he's retreated to his grandmother's home in Northern California, in a place called Grass Valley. And he starts writing a biography of his grandmother and incorporating large sections of her diaries and autobiographical writings. His grandmother had, her name in the book is Susan Burling Ward, and was an artistic woman from the northeast of the United States who married an ambitious young engineer, and they traveled together throughout places like Colorado and Mexico, and I think they go to Idaho for a while before settling in Northern California, working on various projects, setting up mines mostly. I think he tries to invent a new kind of concrete. The grandmother is a writer and an artist, and just a fascinating woman, and the book contains large passages of her diary. It turned out after this book was published that Susan Burling Ward, the character, was based very closely on an actual woman named Mary Hallock Foote. And Mary Hallock Foote's diaries also contain descriptions of her doing a lot of the same things, suspiciously like almost all the same things. So it was a bit of a controversial book, particularly among people related to Mary Hallock Foote. But anyway, it is still a great book, and the characters of Lyman Ward and Susan Burling Ward are both great, intelligent, very sharp, and very clever protagonists. So that is my choice. Those are my answers to the Holmes for the Holidays tag. I will tag Reading Ideas, the Detectorist. Reading Ideas is a booktuber from Northern England who does metal detecting, meaning he's a detectorist. Has some really fun videos. Is building out his library. Let's see, Sterling Reads, who is an owner of many cats. I've admired her videos for a while, and I don't know. Most of the people I watch, it seems, have already done this tag or invented it. So I don't know. You, if you're watching, why don't you're tagged. Consider yourself tagged. Go ahead and do it. Anyway, that's what I have. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.